Hello, nice to meet you. Can you introduce you and your co-star in your channel?
Okay, yes, I'm Patrick, and this fine gentleman is Master Gable. He's our 11-year-old cat, and he's our co-host on our YouTube channel, Creative Teaching and Learning Ideas with Patrick and Gable.
Patrick is an ESL teacher who teaches English for foreign students. What is your teaching background? When we talked before, I know that you taught abroad too. So how did you decide to become a teacher? What happened next? And how did you decide to go abroad to teach English for foreigners?
Okay, that's a good question, because originally I was going to teach philosophy. That was what I was going to do. And then while I was finishing my graduate degree in philosophy, I started tutoring a lot of Japanese and Taiwanese and South Americans. And I realized I could use philosophy when I was teaching English. And so I got on a program, a 5-year program in Japan, the JET program. And then I stayed another year, and I was working in the public schools for 5 years in Japan, and then a private ESL company or EFL company for 1 year. And it was during the time in Japan that I realized this is what I want to do. I want to teach English. So I came back to the States and I got another graduate degree in applied English linguistics. So it was kind of a discovery by mistake. I just went over, I wanted to teach, but while I was doing it, I thought, yeah, this is what I want to do. So.
And what is the main theme? Why the language teaching? What was this main theme? This open moment when you just realized that teaching English is for you?
Okay, I think it was a sort of a reciprocal experience, because I love learning languages and I love teaching as well. And there's that whole thing that you're teaching but you're learning simultaneously. So yeah, I was teaching English in Japan, but I was also learning Japanese. So it's just that thrill and excitement of learning and teaching at the same time. So.
Okay, and what other languages do you know? So you know English, Japanese, anything else?
Working on Turkish. My wife's language is Turkish, and it's very similar to Japanese with the syntax. So it's subject, object, verb. So the verb comes at the end. So Turkish and Japanese are kind of similar. In Spanish, I studied Spanish in college. And then I studied ancient Greek, but you can't speak ancient Greek. So it's just mainly for translating. So.
Okay, yeah. Ancient Greek sounds crazy to me. And, so many languages yourself. Have you started them as an adult, or did you learn some of them as a child?
That's a good question. Spanish, I started studying in high school. And actually my parents, while I was studying Spanish, they picked up German and they were studying German at home. And so I got excited too, watching mom and dad learn German. So I studied a little bit with them when I was in high school, and then kind of off and on. Our daughter wants to learn German too. So we kind of play around and try to learn at home as much as we can. So. Yeah.
Okay, so and do you think there is a difference in acquiring languages for children and for adults? So do you think it is easier to learn a language as a child, or you think it's the same? What is your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, because if the kids are in a good learning environment, they'll pick it up pretty quickly. I mean, a couple examples are friends who have taught abroad for a year or 2 years. The wife or husband, if they don't need to know that language, they won't necessarily pick it up. But the kids, on the other hand, they're playing with the kids from that country and they pick it up immediately. One, they need it to communicate. And two, it just kind of comes natural. You know, they hear these words and then they start using them. With an adult, I think it depends kind of on the situation, because I've done all these case studies where in this country, for example, if you have an immigrant who comes here to set up a business, they'll learn English immediately, again, because they need it. And their kids will learn it if they're helping with the business. But if somebody comes here and they can stay in their cohort or their group of, maybe they're speaking Thai and they don't need to speak English, or they're speaking Vietnamese and they don't need to speak English, then the chance of them learning English is pretty low. But if they need it for a job or school or friendships, I think they'll pick it up pretty quickly. So I think it all depends. For adults, it kind of depends on how much they want it and how much they want to learn. With kids, they just kind of, I think they pick it up naturally, because I've been to so many different countries and taught kids from different nationalities, and they pick up the English so quickly. It's pretty amazing. So.
Yeah, so the only difference is that kids don't need the motivation. They're excited and they just put it, yes, take whatever input they have. And adults, they do need to make some effort. Is it right? Do you think that as adults, we need to make more efforts to have more motivation for learning?
Right. I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and learning a language as an adult, what kind of methods do you prefer? Do you have for yourself? We'll talk about your teaching methods in a while, but having all this experience with learning all these languages by yourself, what is your routine? How do you do it? What do you use? What resources probably?
Personally, or when I'm teaching?
Yes, personally. Only based on your experience, not teaching, but learning experience as an adult learning languages.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think when I'm learning a new language, I'll just start with how I can communicate with it. So I'll ask the native speaker, or if it's a book I'm working out of, I'll start with the first person. So I won't learn we and they and him and her necessarily for the verbs, but just me, because that's what I'm going to use. And then gradually I kind of branch out. But typically I'll learn things that are very useful and I can communicate with other people with, and then gradually it gets deeper. So I start real simple and then go deeper.
What do you think is the best size of the group? Have you taught a different group size? Which one do you prefer? What do you think is the best?
Oh, for example, the number of students in your class?
As the number of students, what is the best number of students in the class for you?
For me, just it pops up 10 to 12, I think is a good number.
And why so? Why so?
What one with 10 or 12, you can pair up and match. And then you've got, I usually like to teach in a circle. So you've got 6 or 5 here and 6 and 5 here. So it's just kind of a nice equal. So the dynamics in the class are equal, and you can give a lot of personal contact in communication with each student. You go over 12, and as far as the students being able to speak in class, of course that time gets limited now when you have more than 12. So 12, I think, of course, it's very rare that you can get but if you have the ideal perfect class, I would say 10 to 12 students is really good.
I came across your channel accidentally because YouTube offered me this, and I guess that's how it happened. And what was curious for me is your approach to teaching, because I think in one of your videos you said that I should think about the movement as a color, or about the verb as a color, something like this. And I was like, I've never thought about the verb as a color. And it was something like some kind of motion, I think. It was like, what color is the swimming? And it was like swimming color. I was so confused. And then I started to watch other videos, and I saw that actually you have a lot of other ideas, especially about involving the movement into the class, and about implementation of all these moving strategies. Can you tell about these strategies, about this? Particularly, I'm interested in this color matching, but can you tell in general about this method you use for teaching?
Okay. Yeah, we'll focus on the color, because the method that I've been developing is called the head-to-toe method of associations for vocabulary acquisition. So it's specifically for vocabulary, but a lot of the teachers that I've taught it to are starting to use it for other things. But it's got almost 50 components now, so I can't go into all 50. But one of those is color. So basically, when a student is learning a new word, I'll just have them, or students, if I'm in a class, I'll just ask them, what if you close your eyes, like let's say that we're working on, take something simple like the word happy. We're learning the word happy. Yeah. And I'll say, close your eyes now. What color do you see when you close your eyes and think about happy? And, common responses are bright orange, or bright yellow, or bright red, or blue, because they look up at the sky when they're happy and they see the blue sky. So basically, it's because a lot of the words are sometimes very abstract. Happy is, kind of concrete, but still it's a word and it's not, something that you can embrace. So the whole idea of my method is to try to take the words or whatever we're studying and put it inside the student's heart and soul. And so color is such a strong, vivid tool that I have. I mean, in the beginning, the students are kind of skeptical, and it's like, what does color have to do with vocabulary?
Okay.
But then, I'll explain why we're doing it, and immediately actually sometimes within the first class, definitely by the second, they're all in. They're ready to use color and vocabulary. And I've taught my age groups. I've taught are anywhere from 5 to 75, and so I've found the neat thing with that color element, whether it's a 5-year-old child or a 75-year-old man or woman, they're all in. They find it interesting because it usually what happens is, like I said, if they say blue and I'll ask them why, they'll say, oh, when I'm happy, I look up and I look up at a blue sky. And so there's that personal connection now to the word and the color and their experience as a human being. So, yeah. And then movement, you asked the question about movement. That's kind of how all my classes start. So I always get the students up and moving before we sit down, because as human beings, we've been moving for millions of years as we learn. And so I think that if a student or the students can exercise before they learn, it just stimulates. I mean, of course, it's bringing more blood and oxygen to the brain, and they're more focused. And so many studies have shown that the more they exercise before class, the more they're prepared to, be attentive, focused, learn, and remember what they're learning. So,
did I understand you correct? I'm thinking about the science behind all of that, and this colors is mostly about associations. Yes, so trying to associate some definition with something else in order to stimulate memorizing. Yes, to know it better. Is that how you explain your idea to your students? Am I right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, for example, I'll take them back to. I'll have them sort of imagine what it was like when they first learned the word apple. And it wasn't like, they came in the kitchen and their mom said, this is an apple, I'll quiz you tomorrow. But instead, they probably came into the kitchen, maybe they gave their mom a big hug and they looked at the counter and said, what's that? And the mom picked the apple up and maybe, it was green or yellow or red. So immediately they saw the color, and then the mom put it in their hand and they felt the hardness of the apple, and then maybe they took a bite out of it, and they smelled the sweetness and they tasted the sweetness, and they heard the crunch. So that one example of apple, there are all the senses there. There's the color for the sight, there's the sound of the crunch, there's the taste, the sweetness for the flavor of the taste, there's the smell of sweetness too, and then they can see it, like I said, of course. So all these different things are going on when they're learning that word apple. And so what I try to do in the classes is I try to mimic or mirror the experience of real life. So when they learned bicycle, they saw the color and the motion. When they learned apple, they had all the sensory experiences along with the word. So.
Don't you think it will slow down your students? Because in order to just memorize the word apple, they need to create all these associations, and it takes more time. Right. And especially during the class when you do all this exercising and you're involving them in all these activities. Do you think it will slow down the learning process, or what is your experience? Probably you did it a lot of times. So
that's one comment that people will make, is that like instead of teaching 10 words, maybe we'll only work on 3, and we'll bring in all those associations. But I like to use the example. I had a student, this is just one of many, and he came to me at the beginning of a semester, and I said, oh, I heard you like studying vocabulary. And he said, yeah, we studied 100 terms last semester. And I said, oh, wow, that's really good. He said, I remember 3 of them.
Oh.
And I said, why is that? And he said, they went so fast and they didn't review and they didn't mean anything to me. And then later, when we finished our class, we did the review at the end of the semester. And let's say that we only had studied 80, so we didn't do 100, but we studied 80. That student remembered, so out of 80, he could remember the definition and how to use 78 of those. So almost 100%. And so the big thing is, yeah, it takes a little more time, but they really learn it. So now if you're just teaching a class, okay, the students need to know these 5 vocabulary for the reading, then you probably don't need to do that. But if you want the students to really learn the vocabulary, then yeah, the more connections you draw in, the better. So sometimes I call it the spider web effect, because there are so many webs, or parts of the web, that if the fly gets stuck in the web, it's going to stay. And if the word gets stuck in their brain web, it'll stay, because there are so many different, because we do color associations, smell associations, job associations, all different kinds of associations. So yeah.
So the more associations we have, the better we memorize it, and the better chances are that it will stick and we wouldn't forget it.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, a big part of this too is that once we give the definition and the meaning, and we go through the different associations, I always have the students give multiple example sentences, and that takes a little time too. But at the same time, that they're learning the word and they're knowing how to use it correctly and on the spot. So, and then once you get into the method and you've done it as long as I have, it goes pretty quick. And like the first class, yeah, it goes kind of slow. Second class, kind of still slow. But by the first week, you put up a word on the board with an example sentence, and they come up with the definition. They're giving you the colors right away, and then they're getting. If you're in a classroom, each student is giving kind of a different color, and so there's more experience with that word too. So yeah, it takes a little longer, but in the long run, they remember it. So
what is your idea of ideal length of the class? Do you think 30 minutes is enough for a language class, or 30 minutes once a week, 30 minutes twice a week, 30 minutes every day? How long should be the class, and how often the student should take it for learning the language effectively?
Yeah, I mean, again, it'll depend on if they're just starting out with the language, or they're midway through, or they're advanced. I mean, I think, at least 3 times a week is optimal, because again, it's all about repetition too. So just once a week, it's possible, but if it's just once a week and they're not using it on their own, likelihood is they're going to forget a lot of that. But if they have a class, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I think that's optimal, because they're reviewing during those three sessions. And then 2, there's kind of optimal exposure to the instructor. Or if you're studying on your own too, just pick out, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, so that it's not too spread out. Because again, if you're in that country, like say if I'm in Ukraine and my family is there studying, and we have to speak your language daily, it's going to be okay, because there's a lot of repetition. But if we're here in the US studying your language and we don't have a lot of interaction, then yeah, it won't be as effective.
So. And how long should be one session? So 3 times a week, how long?
I probably, anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes is enough. Typically classes here are 50 minutes long, 50 minutes to an hour. But I think 30 is fine. But then again, if you want to have a section of review, you probably want to add on 10 minutes to that. So probably 40, 45 minutes. So,
and for our viewers who want to know, who are studying by themselves, because a lot of people are on YouTube in order to learn a language by themselves, they don't want to go to formal classes. So what would you advise to somebody who is learning a language, how to organize this routine effectively? I got that it should be 3 times a week, and it should be 30 to 40 minutes. And in terms of application of your strategy, of this senses strategy, of this smell approach strategy, including the brain, and this movement during the class strategy, how would you advise to do this routine? So if I'm a student and I'm learning Chinese now, for example, how should I arrange my one session, my Wednesday session, for example?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, to start off with, instead of just kind of sitting down I mean, I would kind of treat it like yoga or like a
Okay.
mindfulness class where instead of just sitting down in front of the computer and, trying to key in, first, before that, I would either, as they use the term in mindfulness classes, let's take some time to arrive. So you kind of sit down for a few minutes and you,
Like
yeah,
here.
kind of
Yeah.
empty the mind. Or if you want to, just kind of use a variation of that, you can do your exercise. But just get the mind prepared and ready to learn. Probably at 10-minute segments. So I would try to learn something for 10 minutes, maybe take a little break, and then go another 10 minutes, take a little break, and then go another 10 minutes. So 30, probably for online individual, 30 minutes is enough. 5 could be as well if they're doing 5 minutes a day, because you've seen those books, Russian in 5 minutes a day or Turkish in 10 minutes a day.
I don't believe
So yeah.
5 minutes a day, sorry. I'm not bad at it. I'm learning Chinese for a long time now.
You could probably learn one word, but
And it wouldn't stick. I should go do it next day too. So
yeah.
if I'm learning not with a tutor but by myself, it's the same strategy. Yes, I should take some exercises, take some time to get into it, to get into my learning routine, to clear my mind from everything else which bothers me, and then take it 10 minutes, and then take a deep breath again, take like maybe shake or something, walk around and go back 10 minutes and 10 minutes again. Is that what I got?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because we talk about attention span. I think it's fine to focus on something for 10 minutes. I mean, even if it's the same thing, just focus on it, take a little break so that you're renewed again. Because the key is just taking whatever that information is in, and you want the brain and the body to be fresh. And so if you can do it in 15-minute segments, fine, but 10 kind of seems to be sort of a normal and nice slot, that you work hard for 10 minutes. And in fact, there are some professors that use a technique here in the States where, mainly for science classes, they'll lecture for 10 minutes on a topic, or they'll tell a story for 10 minutes and then take a little break and add in some facts and figures and then tell the next story, so that there's a story, even if it's like a science class, they'll tell a story about maybe how the brain takes in information in the frontal lobe, and a little story, and then they'll give some facts. But a lot of them will break it up with 10-minute sections in a class, so they might only cover 4 or 5 main points, but again, at least the students are going to remember those 4 or 5 points, as opposed to giving 10 points and then not remembering any of those. So.
Do you think it's connected with modern clip thinking? They say that modern people, they are so distracted so many times that they have short thinking, like clip thinking, and we are not able to concentrate for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours as people did before. Do you think it's something something connected to this idea, or it's just a normal mind connection? What is your idea?
I think if we look at the history of the human being, attention span, I don't think it could have gone on for an hour. They would have been eaten by a lion. So I think it kind of depended on the environment. So maybe they were focused on one thing and then they felt danger and then they shifted. But on the other hand, even now, I think if you're really engaged, like our daughter, she loves to read, and so you'll watch her and she'll focus for 40 minutes straight. She'll read and get totally involved, and she'll be so her attention span can go up to 40 minutes to an hour. I think people in general, if they really love whatever it is that they're involved, watching a sporting event or reading a novel or solving some kind of math problem, if they're into math, I think they can go a long time if they really love it. But in general, especially with the computer age, they say that our brain flirts around like a goldfish, but I don't know. I have watched people when I've been on buses. I like to observe people, and with the new little handheld devices, I'll watch people, and I'll watch them flick every 6 seconds. So it's not a minute; it's like 6 seconds looking at something, flick 6 seconds. So it's amazing how quick. And I don't know what they're reading, if they're just looking at pictures, but
how fast should you read for 6 seconds?
Yeah, I think they're just like looking at headlines. They're not really reading in depth or they're looking at pictures.
Yeah.
But I've taken an average of the average flicker on a phone, and they'll look at it for 6 seconds and then flick, and 6 seconds and then flick, or 8, 10. If it's 10 seconds, it's like, whoa, wow, 10 seconds on one frame.
Okay, so let's take to summarize it somehow. You think that the movement during the language study is important, that present in the moment is important, and we shouldn't try to concentrate for too long, try too hard to do the same task, because eventually it wouldn't be effective, and we need to switch from time to time. Is that true? Okay, is there something you can recommend to language learners? Doesn't matter which language, just watching this video. Is there any ideas you can offer, or just something you can tell them?
Yeah, I think 90% of it is passion. So if you really want to learn that language, I think it's easier, you will. And then probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I could give is, 10 minutes or an hour might be too long. So if you really want to do it, you can, break it up during the day too. And maybe you want to study 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, and 10 minutes in the evening. But just find whatever is comfortable for you. Because if you say, oh, I'm going to study it an hour tomorrow. Oh, well, an hour is too long. Maybe I'll put that off until the next day. But if they're studying it on their own, I would just say kind of do it multiple times during the day. And that way it's always fresh, and there's the movement involved and the interest. Interest is a key thing. So if they're interested in it, they'll learn, I think. And then just do what feels comfortable too. Is probably the best advice.
That's a great advice. Thank you so much. I was happy having you today here. That's it for today. Thank you everybody for watching.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye for now.